All right, and I'm going to get us started on the recording too. So now we are started on the recording. So let's jump in here. We are reading from Leviticus. We're going to cover a lot in Leviticus. This is kind of a rambling journey that we're going to take this week, but it'll be fun, and I hope you will help lead it and help guide it in our discussion. But let's start in Leviticus chapter 26. And I want us to read 9 through 13. Did anybody paraphrase? Anybody have time to do their paraphrase this week that wants to share it? It's okay. All right, I'm going to read the text first. And maybe if you feel so inclined to even just off the cuff share something of a paraphrase or what sticks out to you, we'll start that way. In verse 9, Leviticus chapter 26, Leviticus all the way in the front, chapter 26, verse 9. I will look on you with favor and make you fruitful and increase your numbers, and I will still keep my covenant with you. You will still be eating last year's harvest when you will have to move it out to make room for the new. I will put my dwelling place among you, and I will not abhor you. I will walk among you, and I will be your God, and you will be my people. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt so that you would no longer be slaves to the Egyptians. I broke the bars of your yoke and enabled you to walk with heads held high. It's a great passage, isn't it? Let's get some context as we dive into it. Well, first of all, anything stuck out to you in there? Or any questions that you had on this text for this week?
One of the questions I was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something I did research back in the significance of the sabbatical year when it comes to fire.
Yes. Yes. Here in just a little bit. About 20 minutes into today's discussion, if it goes as we want it to go. I promise we will not leave without discussing it. Yep. Oh, great. You want to read it? No. Just, I have you read a little longer of a chunk, but then that's a pretty excessive amount to paraphrase. So I just asked you to paraphrase a few of the key verses there. Yep. That's right. Yeah.
And 13 is God is free and in slavery.
That's right. It's a great text, isn't it?
Yeah. It stuck out to me, broken the bars of your yoke.
That's right.
And I have that too. You know, I have a day that I can look back to and say, this is when my yoke was broken.
That's awesome.
Am I now walking erect, or am I trying to slide, crawl back to where I was?
That's
Why would
right.
I do that?
Right.
Why
would I want to put the yoke back upon me? Man, I think we're in a cultural fight over that. I was talking to Della for a long time about that today. We were talking about attendance in this class, actually just as a whole. And she was like, why do you think attendance is slow? And I was like, I don't know. Feedback's been positive on the class. I said, just to be candid with you, I think we live in a culture where most people choose. How do I express this? They choose to put the yoke back upon themselves, even though they don't want to be under the yoke.
Well, it's a lot easier to stay home.
That's right.
And watch TV.
Yeah.
But that lets you, you're not feeding yourself.
That's
you're
right.
not reminding yourself.
I think
it takes work to maintain.
I've been using this analogy for a lot of things. Technology I've been using it a lot for lately. But think about a gummy bear, okay? And imagine, this is going to tie into Leviticus, we're going to get here in a second. But imagine a gummy bear, and you are very hungry, very, very hungry. Like you haven't eaten in 2 days. Okay, you're so hungry. And then you have gummy bear, one gummy bear. How's that gummy bear taste? Oh, really good. Really, really good. So you go ahead and just finish off the 5-pound Costco bag of gummy bears. Are you full? Are you full?
Yes.
Yeah, you're full by the end of it. Does it solve your hunger issues? Yeah, it solves your hunger issues, right? And you probably even feel pretty good for the next half hour or hour or so, right? Life is good, real good. And then what happens? The inevitable sugar crash, right? Because you haven't eaten anything substantial, you haven't eaten anything healthy. So what do you have to do? What you should do, because you know, is that I need to go eat a good, healthy meal. But instead, what do? Grab more gummy bears. And this is our culture right now, is we just keep grabbing the gummy bears and gorging ourselves and going, this doesn't work. I'm not relationally satisfied. I'm not spiritually satisfied. I haven't really eaten a good spiritual meal in years, but give me another gummy bear. Are you with me here? And Leviticus, why does this tie into Leviticus? Well, what's Leviticus about? Let's start with the name. How many of you, give me outside of reading the Bible in a year? Okay, so if you've done one of the read the Bible in a year plans or something like that, but outside of that, how many of you have spent significant time studying Leviticus? Braden doesn't count. You're a worse nerd than I am, I think. You willingly choose such. No, I'm just kidding. Braden has studied it. Terry?
Like I say, it came with the Crusaders, but I
Yeah.
call myself
Yeah, no, but I just mean that's how, if we did Psalms, most of us would probably raise our hands. If we did Romans, most of us would raise our hands. Leviticus, why Leviticus, all right? It's actually a right book. It is difficult. One of the scholars I was reading on, he wrote the commentary on Leviticus. And he said it's hard, it was really funny, he said, it's hard to even start a commentary that nobody's ever going to read. But one of the things he pointed out, that even in the Jewish teaching on the law, the Midrash, what we call the Midrash, there's a lot less Midrash on Leviticus than there is many of the other books. Isn't that interesting? Almost like they weren't even as engaged with it. Okay, why would that be? Well, how many of you have, if I say we hold these truths to be inevitable, self-evident. Okay, what am I quoting? Poorly.
Just declaration.
Yeah, it's the preamble, right? Okay. And so, how many of you live under the rules of the Constitution of the United States? And how many of you have read said Constitution for front to back? There's a few of us. Most of us in school probably did it at some point. And how many of those rules can you quote? Can you get the first 12? Some people can still. How many, all right. That's kind of my point though, right? It's like it's a law. Leviticus, the name Leviticus, where does that come from? The Levites? Great. And who are the Levites? The priestly line, okay? Remember you have the 12 tribes of Israel, and all the other tribes are granted land, a possession, and a place, but not the Levites. What are the Levites given? What? They roam a little bit, but they have a place, kind of, right? What are the Levites in charge of? The temple. Yeah, the temple. And the Levites really have a job, a specific job. They are the priestly class, right? They are the priests. Okay? So, was that the auto voice on the Bible? Man, it's so funny how often that happens in teaching class now. It's pretty hilarious. I had it on Tuesday too.
That's when you're trying to write on your phone.
And accidentally hit the button. Okay, the Levites are in charge of the temple. Now remember, the other tribes they pay their sacrifices to God. All right, they take in their tithes and their offerings. And the Levites, they live off of a piece of those tithes and sacrifices. Okay, but also they are kind of given a land. They're given the temple to take care of. Okay, and if you think about really all the special relationship that the Israelites have with the land and their different places, but the most sacred place is the temple. Okay, why is the temple so important? What, Braden? It's where God dwells. It's where God dwells. Remember we talked about heaven and earth? We talked about those two concepts. Most simple definition, heaven is the place where God reigns supreme. Earth is the place where he reigns sometimes, but also that humanity has a say, free will has a say in the subject. So in the temple is the place where God's heaven is on earth. Okay, and God dwells. They refer to it commonly like the Ark of the Covenant is the footstool of God. So if you can imagine God sitting on his grand throne and his feet reside on the Ark of the Covenant within the temple. And the code of Leviticus, this book of law, okay, is all about how the Levites are to function in the temple. Why would that be important? It's so hard when you're reading through it to think this is important. It just is, isn't it? What? That's right. That's right. And the priests are kind of called to not only uphold the most standard Mosaic law that we have given in Exodus and Deuteronomy, but also they have their own code, their own special laws that they're required to follow. And the people's relationship with God is dependent upon the Levites, the priesthood class, getting these laws correct. Okay? Now, what is neat is we have archaeology has dug up quite a few ancient law codes. Okay, in the ancient world, when a king took over his rule or his reign, he was responsible for all the laws of his empire. And those laws that he established, it's not like the Constitution of the United States. Those laws didn't live on after him. Once he was deceased, those laws no longer went to be. And so one of the things that a new king taking over would often do was reinstate many of those laws. That happens all the way into practice of the Roman Caesars and even later than that. But like the Caesars in Rome have these edicts that they issue. They exist. An edict lives on until the Roman emperor passes away, and then that edict goes away. Okay, so we have ancient law codes. Let me pull up my notes here that depict different laws in the ancient Near East, and there's some pretty good ones. I was reading through a few this last week. It's been about 5 years since I studied, and I'm pretty in depth, so it was kind of like getting back to them. The most famous is the Law Code of Hammurabi, which is a really ancient text, and there's lots. If you Google search the Law Code of Hammurabi, you'll find more on it than anything else. It's pretty awesome. What you do, how they found them is they're written on these big giant tablets, stone tablets, huge. Often they're like stand tall, and they're written on all different sides. Okay, and they'll have different. And one of the things that's interesting is these would be put up at the corners of their land. So when you were literally crossing through the trails to get into that empire that was being reigned by a king, you would have to pass through what? The laws. Why? Because you were required to uphold those laws now that you had entered into that land. And so a lot of these laws are pretty cool, actually. Like one of them that I was reading this week. Let me see. I want to get the right. The Law Code of Lipit Ishtar. This is one of the newest ones that's been found, been uncovered, and we don't have all of it. Okay, but we do have some of it, and some of the laws are pretty cool. Like if a man borrows an oxen and the oxen's eye is poked out while working the field, the man who has borrowed the oxen owes the man to whom he borrowed it 25% of the cost of an oxen. That's a pretty good law. Everybody else agree? Like pretty clear. You had the oxen, eye went out. If the oxen dies in your care, guess what you pay? 100%, the full cost of the oxen, right? So they're good laws. Like a lot of this stuff is pretty good laws. There's a ton. There's more on family dynamics than probably anything else we found, especially what a husband does with a wife and his other mistresses. That's a big thing. What do you do if you are married to a woman, but then you also have impregnated multiple other women? Okay, and it's pretty fascinating. There's lots of laws on that, what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take care of them, by the way, for Lipit Ishtar. You don't just cast them out, but the women are not allowed to be in the home. It's pretty fascinating. So, but what's really cool is those law codes, the law codes of Hammurabi and the law codes of Leviticus all follow the same kind of base pattern. Okay, where first there's this kind of entry into the log, this prologue, and then there's this listing, extensive listing of all these laws, and then at the end of the law, you have how many of you are under a contract or a covenant right now? How many of you have a signed contract on something? What is it? What contracts do you have? Marriage, yeah, definitely. Any other ones?
Just school district.
School district. You have an employee contract, right? Yeah. What else? Any homeowners? Any mortgages out there? Do you remember the process of signing your mortgage? I just go in and write your name on a piece of paper and walk out, right? I remember the first time we bought one and the woman offered us bottles of water and I was like, what are we getting into right now? And you just go through, right? Paper after paper after paper. Now, what happens if you don't fulfill your side of that contract or agreement? Yeah, they take the home back, right? They repossess it. What happens if you don't fulfill your contract in the ancient Near East? Well, at the end of every contract, there is a series of blessings and curses. Okay? That's what we have in Leviticus chapter 26 and 27. You will be blessed if you keep this contract. Here will be the blessings of this contract. And if you don't, things are going to get bad. All right, I asked you to point to a few laws. Let's talk about some of these laws that are in here. And then we're going to get into the blessings and curses. So, did anybody, what'd you have? Anybody have a law they want to share? Come on, it's fun. Nothing.
13.
What?
In relation to leprosy, so nobody else will pick it.
There you go. I don't know. There's some ones that might be worse than the leprosy ones in there too.
Okay. Want to read the whole chapter then?
No, just pick a law out. Just pick one of them. What are you in? 14?
13.
13. How about verse 53 and 54?
What was that?
53 and 54 is a good one.
53 and 54. But if the priest shall look, and indeed the mark is not spread in the garment, either in the rat work or the wool, or in any article of leather, then the priest shall order them to wash the things in which the mark occurs, and he shall quarantine it for 7 more days.
That's right. That's about mold, all right, or some kind of fungal thing that's going on, and essentially you bring to the priest. What an odd job for a priest! But you bring a garment that has mold on it, and the priest is supposed to check it out. And if the mold grows, there's a series of things you'll see that you're supposed to do. And if the mold continues to grow, then you have to do something different with it. And if it doesn't and it stops, you can wash the garment, and the garment can be used again. Is that important? Would that be important for a culture? This is their law code. This is how they come to live. Yeah. Let's read another one. Who's got another one?
I don't know if it's a law, but 19:9. When you reap the harvest of your
Yeah.
land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. And you shall not strip your vineyard bare, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God.
Yeah, that's totally a law, isn't it? It's a very strict command about what you're supposed to do. It's an awesome text, isn't it? What are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to take every ounce of what you can get out of that field? Nope. You're supposed to leave a little. Leave a little of the vineyard. For who? The poor and the foreigner. It's pretty neat.
I wonder how it applies to me sometimes. And, I also wonder about, the owner. There's old Hank again. He's a drunk,
Yep.
yet he's out there on my land.
Picking my grain.
Picking my grain.
Yep.
But, it says you should do that. You should make allowances for Hank.
Yep.
And for people who have had hard time following.
That's right. And for the foreigner. That's a pretty convicting thing for us as well today. What else? I like that text. We're going to go back to that day. Yeah.
And 7, 22, 20, and beyond. Do not eat any of the fat of cattle, sheep, or goats. The fat of an animal found dead or torn by wild animals may be used for other purposes, but you must not eat it.
It's a good law.
Yeah.
Do you know why it's a good law? I am a hunter. And one time, I know a lot about wild game. One time we shot a really nice mule deer buck. And when we came up to it, we found that it had been gored. It had been in a fight with another deer, and it had been gored in the side. And when we opened it up, all of the fat inside of it carried the bruise, all of it, throughout the entire deer, carried bruising and disease from the fight that it had had. It had passed through all of the fat in that body. This law says you don't eat that stuff if it's been damaged. It's no longer healthy. It's pretty fascinating, isn't it? A law that seems so arbitrary. Anybody else got one? Okay, here's what's important. When we talk about the law codes, the different law codes of the ancient Near East, they're made in wisdom, okay? But they're made in the wisdom of the king, okay? This law is established by God. What relationship does God have with wisdom? Is he wise? Not only that, but he is not simply looking at the world around him and trying to decide what is good and what is right. He is the source and creator of all things. Are you with me? He knows better than anyone what's good for the land and good for people. Okay? And so when we read this law, you get tons of things. You get some of the first laws that exist anywhere about how you're supposed to care for the land. Terry, how are you supposed to care for the land?
Every 7th year,
What do you do?
let it lie.
You let it lie. Why?
When we first touched all these years ago, right down the road here.
Oh, yeah?
Without researching it, it was twofold, as I understood it.
Yeah?
It's as much a discipline as resting on the Sabbath.
Yes, definitely.
But because creation went haywire, it wasn't God's fault, the earth wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Because he said, God, he let this lie.
Yeah.
Pharaoh, I think, was
Yep.
what it is, to rejuvenate it.
That's right.
You probably have more about that.
No, it's pretty good. I mean, one of the things you'll see, this is the easiest place in the country to make this analogy and example. How many of you have seen corn being harvested in the last few weeks? Angela, you're a farmer girl. Tell me, what happens to the soil if you plant the same crop every single year? That's right. What happens to the soil eventually? That's right. So, now, there's actually laws in here about rotating your crops, even you can get into. But one of the things is on the 7th year, you are to rest the land. You are to let the land rejuvenate. Just like you, as people, need to be rejuvenated every 7th day. I don't know, that might be a good word for us to hear too. But also the land in and of itself needs rejuvenation. Okay? And so you're supposed to plan for that. Remember, for 6 years, you're supposed to take over the top and store enough so that on the 7th year, you have to take nothing from the land. Okay, now I want you to think about this because we are not tied. We aren't tied enough. We still are, but we don't see it. We're too distant from it. We are too distant from the land and its supply for our life. Okay? The land is not just meant to provide corn and beans and money, right? It gives us nutrients and life. Our life is codependent with the land. It's also codependent with the animals that we're called to take care of. That's why you find so many laws in here about how you take care of animals. Have you guys, I mean, there's what, like you don't take if you find a bird sitting on its eggs, you don't kill the bird. You may take the eggs. I'm hoping I'm getting this exactly right. But you may take the eggs, but you don't kill the bird while she's sitting on the nest. What an arbitrary, what a silly, Leviticus, what a silly book. I want to get back to Jesus. I want to get back to Psalms. Well, what's that teaching you? What's that law about? Why is it important?
The continuation of the bird.
Yeah, that's right. The continuing life of the bird.
It's teaching you how to take care of God's creation.
That's right. It's teaching you how to take care of God's creation. Why don't you kill the bird? Well, one is the bird is vulnerable. Why is she vulnerable? Because she's a good mama bird, right? And what do you want? Good mama birds who are going to take care of their young. If you kill her and eat the eggs, you have no reproduction of eggs going forward. You're in a relationship with the creation around you. Are you with me? The same with the animals. They talk about the blood of the animals. I'll give this speech until my dying breath. One of the major problems we are facing culturally that nobody acknowledges and talks about is that we consume meat without ever seeing anything die. We have no connection between understanding death and life. Have any of you ever been with somebody in their final breaths? Is that a life-changing event? Yes, it is. It's important. I believe that every young person in our country should experience the taking of a life if they consume meat. Okay? I believe it would do substantial good for the way we interact with one another and the way we think about life in our culture. All right, but that's my little spiel. But you probably hear that one a lot from me. Okay.
You go ask the grade school where this hamburger came from. The store.
That's right. It's from the store. Something died so that you can live. That's right. We think we're protecting it, and there's a part of that, like every right, but it's also important. It's a hard thing to watch, to experience. It gives you a different understanding of the importance of life in the world, right? Okay.
You're talking about the fields resting, and imagine, the spring after, your plants come up. There are your beautiful strawberries.
That's right.
Or tomatoes, just fantastic, bursting with flavor.
Yep.
The first fruit doesn't go to your table.
That's right.
That's always, wow, I'm going to take that.
Yeah.
I could be hungry right now
Yep.
because I haven't planted my field for a while.
That's right.
Or I've made it through the winter on what I had in the jars.
And here the first fruits go to God.
Now those first fruits are going away.
That's right.
Because you love those first strawberries and tomatoes. They're delicious.
Yep. Your finest calf, the most healthy looking one.
First batch of sweet corn.
Yep. The first cookie off the cookie sheet.
Oh, no, that's too much.
That's too far.
Too far.
All right, let's jump over. I'm going to tie all this thought together here, and we're going to jump over to chapter 26. And I want to see, we're back into the blessings and curses, okay? So remember, these are the conditions of the covenant. If you keep the covenant, these blessings will happen to you. And the culmination of these blessings is God will walk with you and be your people, okay? And I'll be with you. That's this hope. The law is not without purpose. It's not just arbitrary rules. It's the Creator God saying, I want to be with you and dwell with you. Here's the conditions on which that can happen. Okay? All right, and then there's the opposite side. Here's what's going to happen. Listen to the spiral of this, verse 14. How many of you had a chance to read through this? Did you catch the spiral of this text? It goes like a little, this is people's lives when they turn away from the Lord. It starts with a little disobedience and it just spirals out of control. If you will not listen to me and carry out these commands, and if you reject my decrees and laws, I'm in 15, verse 15 of chapter 26, then I will do this to you. I will bring on you sudden terror, wasting diseases and fevers that will destroy your sight, and they're going to sap your strength. And then listen to this. You will plant seed in vain because your enemies will eat it. and I will set my face against you, so that you will be defeated by your enemies. And verse 18, if after all of this you still won't listen to me, I will punish you for your sins 7 times over. I will break down your stubborn pride and make the sky above you like iron and the ground beneath you like bronze. Well, that should be good. Iron and bronze, right? No. Why is it terrible? Do you want your soil to be like bronze? No. What's the purpose of these curses in God's? What's his hope? You heard it right here. That you hear. I'm just going to keep bringing it on you until you listen. If you remain hostile towards me in verse 21 and refuse to listen to me, I will multiply your affliction 7 times over as your sins deserve, and I'll send wild animals against you, and then they will rob you of your children, destroy your cattle, and make you so few in number that your roads will be deserted. 23, if in spite of all these things you don't accept my correction but continue to be hostile toward me, I myself will be hostile toward you and will afflict you for sins 7 times over. I will bring the sword on you to avenge the breaking of the covenant. And when you withdraw into your cities, I will send a plague among you, and you will be given into enemy hands. And I will cut off your supply of bread. 10 women will be able to bake your bread in one oven, and they will dole out the bread by weight. You will eat but not be satisfied. 10 women are using one. They can only come up with enough to make 1 loaf of bread, and you'll dole out little pieces at a time. And you'll be trapped in your city where the enemies will be overtaking you. In verse 27, if you, in spite of this all, you don't listen, verse 29 here, this is you will eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. I will destroy your high places, cut down your incense altars, and pile your dead bodies on the lifeless forms of your idols, and I will abhor you. I will turn your cities into ruins and lay waste your sanctuaries, and I will take no delight in the pleasing aroma of your offerings. I myself will lay waste the land so that your enemies who live there will be appalled. They don't even want to be there. I will scatter you among the nations and will draw out my sword and pursue you. Your land will be laid waste and your cities will lie in ruins. Then the land will enjoy its Sabbath year. I love this text. I know it's messed up, but I just love it. Then the land will enjoy its Sabbath years all the time that it lies desolate and you are in the country of your enemies. Then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbaths. All the time that it lies desolate, the land will have the rest it did not have during the Sabbaths you lived in it. Woo! God's upset because it's a relationship. He's calling his people to tend to the land, to take care of his creation. It's not simply that you don't follow my little arbitrary rule I made up and get away. It's you not following my covenant means that you are causing harm to the land and the creation that I care about. And because of that, this is what's going to happen. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Cannibalism doesn't exist in the ancient. Really, there's no history. There's very few spots and tribes that practice cannibalism, period, in the history of the world. Okay? But we do have places where cannibalism took place in the ancient Near East, but only at the point of severe famine. Okay? This is what's messed up, is I would never eat my child. Right? I would willingly let my child eat me before, weird thoughts with Brandon on a Wednesday night. I know. But in the ancient Near East, children aren't regarded in the same high regard that we have them in our world today. Okay? They are sacrificed to gods in different cultures. Okay? They're offered a sacrifice. They're a part of your, just part of your offspring. Okay? And so they would, in times of famine, to survive, would eat their own offspring. And that's what God's saying here, is it's going to get so severe the famine is in your desolation. You will have so ruined the land. You'll have caused this. You will have so ruined the land that it will have nothing left in it to take care of you. It will be so desolate that the people who overtake you, they won't even want to live there. All right. But let's get back to the good. As for those who are left, I will make their hearts feel. Let's go all the way to in verse 40. All right. Verse 40. But if they will confess their sins and the sins of their ancestors, their unfaithfulness and their hostility toward me, which made me hostile toward them so that I sent them into the land of their enemies, then when their uncircumcised hearts are humbled and they pay for their sin. All right, so what's the conditions here?
Confess.
They need to confess not only their sins, but yeah, the sins of their ancestors. And what else? They reach and return with humility. Uncircumcised hearts is my favorite line. It's like this. Uncircumcised hearts, right? Right? Are humbled and they pay for their sin. I will remember my covenant with Jacob and my covenant with Isaac and my covenant with Abraham. Wait a minute! You got to pay close. This is why you read the text close. What covenant is he remembering? Is he remembering the Mosaic covenant, the Levitical covenant? That's the covenant you think that he should remember, right? This is what it is. This is the Mosaic covenant we're in the middle of. But that's not what he said. He remembers the covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Isaac and Jacob are rolled in, right? That's Abraham's covenant. And what's that covenant? We've covered it. We've talked about it. Come on. All nations of the earth will be blessed through you. It's this covenant he makes with Abraham. He establishes with Abraham, right? And so when they confess and they return, God will remember that he has brought them out. He will remember Abraham's covenant. And it's a neat switch that happens there. Okay? And so he says, I will remember that covenant with Abraham. All right, verse 42, read with me. I want you to keep reading when I stop. I will remember my covenant with Jacob and my covenant with Isaac and my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember what? The land. You see that? And I will remember the land. For the land will be deserted by them and will enjoy its Sabbath while it lies desolate without them. They will pay for their sins because they rejected my laws and abhorred my decrees. Yet in spite of this, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject or abhor them as to destroy them completely, breaking my covenant with them. I am the Lord their God. But for their sake, I will remember the covenant with their ancestors whom I brought out of Egypt. Oh, here we go. What covenant is this? Whom I brought out of Egypt. That's right. This is the Mosaic covenant, right? And I will remember I will remember the covenant with their ancestors whom I brought out of Egypt in the sight of the nations to be their God. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. Why does it end with I am the Lord? Do you have Lord capitalized there? Yeah, which means it's what word? Yahweh. Okay, why does it end with that statement? Anybody watch The Mandalorian? Did you watch The Mandalorian? Anybody? It was like Disney's Star Wars knockoff TV show. Yeah, there's one character on there that like he says, I have spoken. And it's like the end of the conversation. Like when he decides to do something, he just says, pretty funny, I have spoken. And that's the end of the conversation. It's over. You can't talk to them anymore about it. All right, this is I am the Lord. The basis of this covenant is me. Okay, this isn't some arbitrary king that's going to pass away. I am the Lord. All right? So I want you to think about this land. All right, here's what got me. Here's what got me thinking about this. What about this analogy of walking with God? All right, don't think just metaphorically for a second. But think about walking with God. That's in 26 there, right? At the beginning of that first chunk we read. Verse 11, I will put my dwelling place among you, and I will not abhor you. Verse 12, I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. Who are you connected to when you walk? If God is walking among you, what does that look like?
Completely in tune with it.
What?
Completely in tune with it.
You're completely in tune with Him. You're in step with Him.
That Lord restored relationship like He had with Adam.
Yeah.
There was no big shock. God was in the garden, walked in the
That's
garden.
right.
Adam was there until sin entered.
Yeah.
It was, well, let me hide.
Yeah. Till sin breaks it down.
We don't have to hide anymore.
Think about, I want you to think for just a second. I want you to take off your shoes. You don't have to actually take off your shoes, okay? But please don't take off your shoes. It's the end of a long day. All right? But take off your shoes in your mind. And I want you to walk with God in a few places. I want you to walk with God along the beach. What do you feel? What? Being lifted up. Walk on the beach with Him, though. What do you feel? Huh? You feel all of it? You feel what? Relaxed.
Sand, water.
You feel sand, don't you? If you're barefoot walking on the beach, what do you feel? Okay, now if you're barefoot walking with God along a road in Illinois come March, what do you, all right, we'll go to April. I want it rainy still though, okay? April, what do you feel between your toes? That rich, dark, beautiful Illinois mud, right? Where else do you want to walk at? Anybody got a garden they love? Walk in the garden. What about the corn stubble? What do you feel then? How? Walk through the woods together. But you're. This is what I want you to see, because I don't think we miss this because we read it so metaphorically so fast. But there's a connection. He will walk among you. He will be in the place that you will be. You will be connected to the land. Are you with me? You'll be connected to the creation around you. I want to read you, we'll kind of close here, because it's more than that. I have this song that's like my favorite song right now, and it's an old song. It's by Lone Star. I know, it's terrible. But it's gonna get you, okay? And it's called My Front Porch Looking In. You guys know my kids? We gotta set it. All right. My oldest little daughter, what color is her hair? Okay. And then I've got a little boy, and what color is his hair? And what color are his eyes? Anybody know? Blue. Both my kids ended up with blue eyes. All right, here we go. The only ground I ever owned was sticking to my shoes. It's a great analogy, isn't it? Now I look at my front porch in this panoramic view. I can sit and watch the fields fill up with rays of glowing sun, or watch the moonlight on the fences like that's where it was hung. It's a beautiful description. It's kind of this, here I am, I'm on my front porch. I'm tied to the creation around me. I'm there, I'm connected with it, right? It's important, it's stabilizing. I can feel the mud on my boots, right? Or watch the moonlight on the fences like that's where it's. My blessings are in front of me. It's not about the land. I'll never beat the view from my front porch looking in. There's a carrot top who can barely walk with a sippy cup of milk. A little blue-eyed blonde with shoes on wrong because he likes to dress himself. And the most beautiful girl holding both of them. Yeah, the view I love the most is my front porch looking in. Obviously, I cry every time. Okay, just to make it clear. But I want us to think about this with walking with God. It's like this, we are connected. This is what the covenant, this is what Leviticus can teach you if you'll let it, is you are connected to the creation around you. But more importantly, you're in this intimate relationship with God. It's not about the land. It doesn't mean the land's not important, right? But it's not about the land. It's about my relationship with my covenant people and the relationship that holds with creation at the same time, and tying all of these things together. So I want you this week, here's your assignment. I want you to go for a barefoot walk. You better do it before Thursday, because the weather's supposed to change. I don't care where it is as long, man, I do care where it is. I want it to not be something that's man-constructed. Okay? It might be a little cold, I'm sorry. The weather was perfect for it last week, okay? But I want it to be something where you can feel with your toes what the earth is like. And then I want you to remember that the fullness of God walking among us happens. That we don't have to think with imagination. God became flesh in the person of Jesus Christ. And his toes and feet experienced in walking the same sensations that yours do. It's literal. He will walk among you. It becomes a literal thing. All right? I want you to hold all that. That's your homework for this week. Any questions about this text? Did I get enough of the... Okay.
The only, and what did you say about the soil? I didn't hear what you said.
All the nutrients get
Okay.
Yep.
I'm pretty good at saying.
These ecological, they're pretty... There's a lot of this being the first ecological text. I was kind of debated, but there's a lot to it here. So, okay. Well, let's pray to close. Father, send us out barefoot sometime this week into your creation, into the place that you love and the land that you love, and that you won't let us just abuse, that you won't stand for that. You don't stand for abuse in any form. You can't stand slavery. You can't stand when we enslave the land and take from it relentlessly, when we care more about our own appetite than we do the appetite of those around us. Father, we ask that that at that time that we walk among the land, that we're there, that you be with us, that you be present, that you give us vivid images of your Son and him walking among the land. It's through your Spirit. It's in that name of the Son, who is perfectly you, that we pray. Amen.